Hello! Today I'll be looking at these antennas from RushFPV, but just before we get into it, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it. Comment down below, please subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to click the little bell icon in the corner which will tell you when I'm uploading stuff. So I've used VTX from RushFPV way back in the past, before Smart Audio. Liked it a lot because it was very clean. And they asked me if I wanted to take a look at these antennas, and having looked at them, I thought, that's a very good idea. Why has no one else done that? These are the cherry antennas, and they come in a range of flavours, and I've got 3 of them here. I've got the SMA version, and then I've got 2 MMCX versions, which is the straight and the 90 degree. There's also, I've got the straight SMA, there's a 90 degree one as well, and I'll show you what they look like. And they do come in pairs. So the SMA one is pretty basic SMA. It's got this sort of semi-rigid thing, which is very nice. It's a bit vague about exactly what type of antenna it is. It says it's circular polarized. The SMA one is pretty basic, as you might expect. Just screw it in and go again. It was the MMCX ones I thought were quite interesting because of how they worked. What you get in here, this is the straight one. As I said, there's a 90 degree one. And what was interesting about it is the mounting, because often with MMCX it's a case of there'd be MMCX to SMA and then you plug SMA in. These ones, you know, it's come like this, but they're not all going to be floppy because they have this little mounting piece here. And you see the mounting piece goes over the antenna, and then you can screw this down with these other bits in here. And I thought that is a really neat way of making sure your antenna is sort of mounted nicely without having to go sort of multiple extensions and things, which I thought was quite a differentiating factor. So I thought, let's get these installed on a quad or two, and we'll see how easy these are to install and see how they perform. So join me soon. So we're starting off, and we've got this skew planer. It's a little worse for wear, but it works pretty well. So I'm just going to fly out over there to a distance or so, fly around these trees and stuff, see what sort of reception we get, and then try on the RushFPV ones. Okay, in a slight cock up, I then realised that my existing antenna is RPSMA and the one I want to replace it with is SMA. Oops, I didn't notice that. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and replaced this with the little one that's on its own MMCX. I suppose the only problem with this one is it's sort of rigid there, it won't lean over and stay in that position. But the good news is that I get to compare this one with something sort of very much on the same idea, which is a Foxeer Lollipop here, which I think is probably the same sort of axis type antenna. We'll find out that one after. I really don't think through my field intros else I'd think about, actually we want to put these side by side, so it's no good saying I'm going to fly this first and then fly that second. Now, one thing to note here is that because it takes a while to install the RushFPV antenna, because I had to remove the top and take the MMCX off and then reinstall it and put the screws on, the weather conditions slightly change. So if it looks a little bit darker in the RushFPV antenna one, that's because it was that we sort of had some rain clouds coming over, and we had some light rain amongst this stuff as well. So that's not about the antenna, that's just weather conditions, unfortunately. So what I'm interested in here is trying to fly effectively the same route, and I'm just going to tweak the footage from the skew to sort of catch it up a bit, because going behind these trees is where we had a little bit of a difference. If you look on the skew, we get a little bit more staticky interference than on the RushFPV antenna. It's not much, but it was the only real significant difference I noticed, because flying around just in the field generally, we really didn't see much of this stuff. So again, I've deviated here. I'm flying around the trees on the FPV, the RushFPV, and I'm going slightly out on the skew. But again, where you dive down here on the skew, you see just a little bit of that flicker of static there, which is quite interesting. And I don't think we actually have a comparison on this particular one, but we do on the next one. But yeah, I mean, what I say about these things is, well, it's at least as good as the skew I had. Oh no, I do. There's my dive on the RushFPV antenna. Just goes slight black and white. There's no static. And I did this thing about going up high to see if it made any difference, because the angle of the antenna would be slightly different. But I really didn't have a problem there. All good again. Again, got a little bit black and white there. That seems to be the rapid fire having to resync the signal there, but comes back in. So yeah, that was the original one. Then I moved over to the Hobby Bro comment and installed the RushFPV antenna, the SMA version here, and I'm a little bit more synced in, I'm glad to say, on this one. And this is versus the Lollipop, which I really thought is a really decent antenna. So I was I felt this is more of a decent test, because that skew is just a sort of generic skew. This is more of a named brand. And you see, you can just sort of fly them low, a couple of 100 meters away, and you don't get any sort of issues at all. They're pretty much identical here. And of course, because an SMA is easy to swap, we had the weather conditions just about the same, although they're changing on a minute by minute basis. So more significant here is, once again, going behind the trees. And of course, I can't fly exactly the same spot, but anecdotally it looks like the Lollipop doesn't cope as well as the RushFPV antenna. As simply as that. Again, I'm just gonna burst the footage slightly forward on the the Fox here, just to catch up. So we're going behind these trees at the same rate. We barely have a flicker here. I mean, I'm fairly close in, and I'm on 200 milliwatts of power, which is not too bad when you're just behind sort of a single tree like this. You see we got good pitch all the way through. Again, this is interesting. As we go out here, we go into a split S, dive down just over the same place. You'll see we get a little bit of static on the Lollipop, and again the Rush is completely clear. So I have to say, Rush, I think, takes it on both these occasions, doing a slightly better job of the static there. Well, I've got to say, I've been really impressed with these RushFPV antennas. These aren't a scientific review. I haven't got any of this really superb test equipment for measuring antennas and how they work and stuff. I just put them on a quad and fly them. And on that sort of range, you know, there wasn't an awful lot of room. And what I was after is, are these worst saying better than the existing antennas? Because I felt my existing antennas were quite good. Especially the little Foxtail Lollipop, which I've talked about in the past, and I think is a really good antenna. But I think these came up at least as good, and I think they outperformed when there was a little bit of static there. These seem to do slightly better. And one thing I haven't done is take them off these quads, because what I often do with these things is these quads I'm fairly happy with, and I put something on, I test it, I take it off again and put the original back on. It's like, I've got no intention of taking these off. These are working really, really well, and there's a lot to be said for that. My only nitpick on this one, this is where it's connected via the MMCX straight onto this adapter and up, is I'd normally bend the antenna back, because obviously normally I'd be flying like that, and bending the antenna back gives me a sort of straighter angle. So you can't do that. You can sort of press this antenna down further or lift it up, so you can have it as practically like a little stubby sat there if you want to. That said, obviously I didn't have any issues with reception. The fact it was like this meant nothing. There wasn't being blocked at all, so that worked really well. Equally so did this one, which is already angled from the SMA adapter, so when I'm racing like that, it's up that way. Now the one I didn't test out explicitly is this right angled one, and this is the sort of one that would go on a VTX like this, where you have the MMCX on the side. So by putting a right angled connector straight onto it like that, you'd be able to bring your antenna out sort of there-ish. But you know, it depends whether you have whereabouts your MMCX adapter is on your VTX and whereabouts you want to route it. But yeah, really good. I mean, it does strike me that when you've got an MMCX to SMA and then you've got an SMA, you're obviously doing a slightly better thing by getting rid of that connection, because you've got just a single connection all the way through. So it can't be bad to get rid of these. The other thing that needs pointing out about these cherry antennas is when you buy one of these things, you don't just get an antenna, you get a pair, which I think is pretty good value. And two antennas is certainly better for the price of one. If you've got lots of quads, easy to replace. If not, it's great to have a spare, especially in MMCX. In a really heavy crash, I have managed to rip those off completely. So again, you might think, well, that test really wasn't long range, was it? You're only going behind a couple of obstacles. But again, that I think is quite typical sort of FPV flying. And certainly if you were racing, you wouldn't have any obstacles. You'd just be on a pretty flat course with less range than that, and you wouldn't have an issue. And going in and out of trees on that sort of range, I think is fairly typical of the sort of flying you might do. Obviously, more trees you go behind, the more breakup, but these are off to an excellent start. Anyway, These have been the cherry antennas from FPV Rush Racing, and thanks very much to those for sending them down. And of course you can find links below to where you can get those antennas. Hope this has been helpful, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.